जी दोस्तों, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ YouTube ਚੈਨਲ ਤੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਜੀ ਕਰ ਲਓ, ਵੀਡੀਓ ਲਾਈਕ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹੋ, ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹੋ। ਅੱਜ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਲਿਸਨਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 1 to 5 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ ਬਲੈਂਕਸ ਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਨਸਰ ਲਈ 3 ਵਰਡ ਨੰਬਰ ਦੇਣੇ ਆ। ਨੈਕਸਟ 6 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 10 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ ਇਹ MCQ ਆ। ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਪਾਰਟ 2 ਦੀ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 11 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ 7 ਤੱਕ ਇਹ ਬਲੈਂਕਸ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਨਸਰ ਲਈ 3 ਵਰਡ ਨੰਬਰ ਦੇਣੇ। ਨੈਕਸਟ 18 ਲੈ ਕੇ 20 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 8 ਲੈ ਕੇ E ਤੱਕ ਆਪਸ਼ਨ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 2 ਆਪਸ਼ਨ ਨੇ ਚੂਜ਼ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ। ਨੈਕਸਟ ਪਾਰਟ 3 ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 21 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 30 ਤੱਕ ਮੈਚ ਦੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਟਾਈਪ ਆ। ਨੈਕਸਟ 27 ਲੈ ਕੇ 30 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ ਇਹ MCQ ਆ। ਅਤੇ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਪਾਰਟ 4 ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 31 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ 36 ਤੱਕ ਇਹ ਬਲੈਂਕਸ ਆ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਨਸਰ ਲਈ 2 ਵਰਡ ਨੰਬਰ ਦੇਣੇ। ਨੈਕਸਟ 37 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 40 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਆ ਇਹ MCQ ਆ। ਅਤੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਰੀਡ ਕਰੋ ਅਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਲਿਸਨਿੰਗ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
Part 1. Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a woman who will soon move house and an employee of a telephone company. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen and answer questions 1 to 5.
Atlantic Telephone Company. My name is Dan. How can I help you?
Oh, hello. I'm calling because you're my telephone service provider and I'm going to be moving house next week. I need to have my phone disconnected and then I want to have it connected at the new address.
We can do that for you now over the phone if you like.
Oh, that'd be good.
All right then. First, could you tell me your phone number?
Yes, it's 5062 7840.
The customer says the number is 5062 7840. So 5062 7840 has been written next to the example on the question paper. Now continue with questions 1 to 5.
Thank you. And is the account in your name?
Yes, it is.
Could you spell your full name, please?
It's Penny Ryan. That's PENNYRYAN.
Thank you. Now I just need to ask you a question for security purposes. I hope you don't mind, but could you tell me your date of birth, Ms. Ryan?
No, I don't mind. It's the 24th of March 1982.
Right. And do you know yet the date on which you'll be moving?
Yes, it's next Tuesday, the 16th of September.
Thank you. Now, madam, can you tell me where you'll be moving to?
My new address will be 18 King Street, Blacktown.
Uh-huh. I can allocate you a new telephone number now if you like, though it won't be operational till you actually have it connected.
Oh, that'd be really useful. I could tell my friends the new number even before I move.
Do you have a pen and paper handy?
Yes.
Okay. Your new number will be 7690 3275.
Great.
Now, up until now, you've been receiving your telephone bills once a month. As a long-standing customer, you have the option of being billed only once every 3 months if you like.
I'll stick with monthly bills. It just makes it easier for me to stay within my household budget.
All right then.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, Ms. Ryan, could you tell me which type of contract you are on with Atlantic Telephone Company? Is it Home Plus, Economy Saver, or Flexible Bundle?
Let me think. I think I used to be on Home Plus, but then I got a mobile phone and I wasn't using my landline that much anymore, so I switched plans. That's right, I switched to Economy Saver about a year ago.
Right, thank you. Now, I'd like to tell you about our new type of contract we have. It's called the 3-in-1. If you have your landline, your mobile, and the internet connection with us, you get a 20% discount every time you pay the bill.
Oh, but with my mobile, I'm using a very cheap provider, but they're not that reliable. If I do switch contracts, will I be locked in for a certain time period?
Well, that's the case with Home Plus, but with this one you're free to change again at any time without penalty.
Ah. In that case, I'll switch from Economy Saver to 3-in-1.
Good. I'm sure you'll find you'll make real savings with that.
Oh, I just have a question about the internet.
Yes. What do you want to know?
There are certain times when I can make unlimited downloads, like if I want to download a movie. That's from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m, isn't it?
It's a bit more restricted than that. It's from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. It turns out that the peak period of accessing large files is from 11 at night to 2 in the morning.
Oh, well, that's interesting. There must be a lot of night owls.
I suppose so. Now, do you mind if I ask you, what's the main type of phone call you make? Any information you give me will be kept confidential. It's just information that helps us provide a better service to our customers.
All right then. But what do you mean by type of phone call?
Would you say the majority of your calls are to friends and relatives, or are they work-related, or for paying bills and so on?
Well, I started to work from home last year, so most of them were work-related. But then I didn't make enough money from that line of work, so I got a part-time job, and now I mainly use the phone to call relatives. I tend to keep in contact with friends by email.
Okay, thank you. Now just one more question, then we'll be finished. In the years that you've been with Atlantic Telephone Company, how would you rate our service overall?
Well, initially there were a few problems, and it wasn't really satisfactory. But in general, I'd say things have been mostly satisfactory. My previous service provider was very good, but they went bankrupt.
All right then, that wraps it up. Thank you very much, and I hope your move goes smoothly.
Thank you.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
ਪਾਰਟ 2 ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 11 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 70 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ ਬਲੈਂਕਸ ਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਨਸਰ ਨੂੰ 3 ਵਰਡ ਨੰਬਰ ਦੇਣੇ ਆ ਨੈਕਸਟ 18 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 20 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ MCQ ਆ ਤੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੀਡ ਕਰੋ ਤੇ ਪਾਰਟ 2 ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
A group of people has just arrived at their hotel for a 2-week holiday. The hotel manager is talking to them about some hotel facilities and rules. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 17.
Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see all of you here. I'd like to tell you a bit about the hotel, including a few do's and don'ts. I know you've just had a long trip, so I'll keep it brief so that you can go to your rooms and put your feet up. We want you to relax and enjoy the casual atmosphere of this place. You are on holidays, after all, but I'd ask you not to walk around in bare feet. It's just that it's so easy to bring sand into the building when you come back from the beach. So we'd appreciate it if you could at least wear shoes while on the premises. Oh, and if you want to hire some equipment, you'll find a good range of gear such as beach umbrellas, surfboards, and snorkeling equipment down at the Beach Cafe for quite reasonable rates. We used to hire out such things from reception, but that was discontinued last year. If you do need to speak to someone at reception, there are staff on duty there 7 days a week, usually either myself, Maureen, or Bruce. The early risers among you might like to go down to the beach to see the sun rise at 6 o'clock, but we're not open till 7 in the morning, and we're here until 6 in the evening. You'll also find a range of brochures about activities and attractions in the district. If you need to contact hotel staff after hours, you can just call 7946 from the phone in your room. The cleaners come in to vacuum the rooms and clean the bathrooms every second day, and the bed sheets and towels are changed twice a week, on Tuesdays and Fridays. Smoking is not allowed inside the building, and we'd also ask you to refrain from smoking when you're near the swimming pool area. If you do need to have a cigarette, you can go out onto your balcony, where you'll also find an ashtray. When you're sitting out on your balcony, you might get a visit from some of the local birds. They're very colorful and friendly, but we'd ask you to resist the temptation to give them something to eat, because they can quickly become dependent on handouts. There's a pond in the garden at the back of the hotel, and we'd appreciate it if you didn't feed the fish. They can get quite ill unless they are given the right kind of food. Just one point on noise. There's a general house rule to keep noise to a minimum after 11 at night. It's fine to enjoy music and lively conversation, but it's important to be considerate and respect everyone's right to have a good sleep.
You now have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
I didn't mean to take up so much of your time, but I've just remembered that I need to tell you a few things about the disposal of garbage. We do like to do things in an environmentally friendly manner around here, and so we recycle garbage where possible. There are separate bins for glass and metal, but we don't yet have a facility in this area for the recycling of plastic. So that should just go in with your general unrecyclable waste, along with food scraps. The gardener wishes he could use them to make compost for the garden, but that's a little impractical at present. It'd be good if you could leave your old newspapers at reception. The local school is involved in a recycling project, and they send someone to the hotel to pick them up. If it's raining and you don't feel like going out, there are plenty of ways to pass the time in the hotel. There's a gym on the second floor if you want to get some exercise, and a couple of billiard tables in a room next to the gym. For relaxation, there's a coin-operated spa, which is also located on the second floor. If you'd like to watch a movie, you can borrow a DVD from reception and watch it in your room. Also, if you've brought your laptop with you, you can connect to the internet in your room for a small fee. All these rules are designed to ensure you have a pleasant stay here. If any of you has the energy to go out tonight, you'll find there's plenty to do. Just around the corner, there's a nightclub if you feel like some dancing. But if you want to have a few drinks without the music, there's a bar in the center of town. But you'll need to take a taxi to get there. There's also a cinema and even a casino down there. If you like to sing, you'll find a karaoke club right across the road from the hotel. Anyway, I hope you all have a very happy stay with us.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
ਪਾਰਟ 3 ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਇਹਦੇ 21 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 26 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਹੈ ਮੈਥ ਦੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਟਾਈਪ ਆ। ਨੈਕਸਟ 27 ਤੱਕ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 30 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਆ ਇਹ ਮੈਥ ਦੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਟਾਈਪ ਆ। ਸਾਰੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਇੱਥੇ ਰੀਡ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਾਰਟ 3 ਦਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ।
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a discussion between a nursing student and a tutor after the student has done some practical training at a home nursing service for older patients. First, you will have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 26.
Now, you spent last week doing practical training with the home nursing service, dealing with elderly patients. How did it go?
Oh, it was pretty good. I mean, I learned a lot since I hadn't had much to do with older patients before.
Well, with our ageing population, care of the elderly is a major focus of the healthcare system. And quite a range of healthcare professionals are called upon.
Yes, I was surprised in a few cases. For instance, we know that preventing falls is very important. There's a separate falls clinic, but if a patient appears to be unsteady on their feet, whether they're walking unaided or using a walking stick or a frame, the nurse has to get in touch with a physiotherapist.
That's right. We always need to be on the lookout for signs of deteriorating health. If you notice that a patient is becoming disoriented, it could be caused by tiredness or the side effects of medication. So what you have to do is contact their doctor, who will then assess what the cause could be.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to work out exactly what's wrong. There was one patient who bumped into furniture a few times in her own living room while we were there.
Well, as you know, our vision can deteriorate with age. And in the case of elderly patients, we need to refer them to an occupational therapist if they're experiencing problems due to visual impairment. If necessary, it's up to that specialist to refer them to an optometrist.
I see. What about the patients who don't want our help? I mean, they're free to live their lives as they want, and we can't force them to see a doctor or someone.
Yes, it's not unusual for our patients to decline assistance, especially the men. It's often a matter of pride or an overestimation of their own capabilities. But when there are potentially serious issues that could have a long-term impact on their health and safety, we get the aged care team to pay them a visit. Sometimes they just end up having a friendly chat, but at least they're informed about what services are available.
So they provide a bit of psychological help, like a doctor often does. What about when a patient appears to be becoming increasingly frail? I mean, there could be a whole number of causes like the time of day, or just simply old age?
You need to remember that sometimes elderly patients can't go shopping regularly, or they can't afford much nutritious food. Because it can be a mixture of reasons that might need to be addressed by the doctor or the aged care team, we first contact a dietitian because we find that almost everyone can benefit from an expert review of the types of food they're eating.
What about the patients who have pets? I mean, I've been into some people's homes and they seem to be a kind of health hazard, especially the ones with a lot of cats or birds in cages.
Well, pets do a lot of good for humans. They provide company, they're a reason to get some exercise, particularly dogs, and generally they do more good than harm. But you're right, they can spread disease, and also dogs and cats can trip up their owners. We used to let the occupational therapist handle that issue, but now if we have concerns we give the Falls Clinic a call for a home assessment.
Oh, right. I'll just make a note about that.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Some of the patients we visited last week had dementia, so I'd just like to clarify a few things about that if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. With increasing life expectancy, we're going to be seeing more and more of it.
I know that dementia can be caused by genetic or environmental factors, such as overindulging in alcohol over a long period of time, but it seems that it can be difficult to diagnose dementia because its symptoms can occur with various other conditions.
That's right. Some of them, such as Pick's disease, can't be overcome, whereas others, such as brain tumours, can.
One of the patients we saw appeared to be very anxious. I thought that might have been a side effect of the medication she was on, but the nurse I was training with told me it was a frequently occurring syndrome of people with dementia. They're upset at not being able to do some of the things they could in the past, and often don't trust those around them.
And many healthy people get anxious about the future, whether it's about things going on in their own lives or what's happening in the wider world. It's good though. One of life's pleasures that people with dementia continue to enjoy is food. Generally, we find they're keen on cakes and desserts, so you have to make sure they have a balanced diet overall. Elderly people with dentures may avoid chewy food, and their taste receptors for salt can become diminished, which is a normal part of ageing.
We had some lectures last month about research done on therapies to enhance the well-being of all kinds of age groups. For example, they told us that children recovering from surgery really like to sing if they've got the energy. People with dementia usually experience a lift in their mood while listening to music, and people with depression nearly always benefit from doing regular exercise.
Yes, it's very rewarding to see patients responding to measures like those, and it helps us view their health from a broader perspective.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 4 ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 31 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 36 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਆ ਬਲੈਂਕਸ ਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਨਸਰ ਓਨਲੀ 2 ਵਾਲੇ ਨੰਬਰ ਦੇਣੇ। ਨੈਕਸਟ 37 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 40 ਤੱਕ ਦੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਆ MCQ ਹੈ। ਸਾਰੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਚੰਗੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਰੀਡ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਾਰਟ 4 ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ।
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You'll hear a lecture to anthropology students about an ethnic group called the Tuareg. Many of these people live in the Sahara Desert in Africa. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon, everyone. In today's lecture, I'll be outlining some of the main economic activities of the Tuareg. The Tuareg are an ethnic group who live in North and West Africa, mostly in the Sahara Desert and surrounding regions. There is no consensus on the size of the Tuareg population today, with most estimates ranging between 750,000 and 1.3 million people. The main reason for this uncertainty is their nomadic lifestyle. It's always difficult to conduct a census among people who do not live in permanent settlements. The Sahara is known around the world as a very arid region, and the ability of these people to survive in such an inhospitable environment is amazing. The Tuareg have sometimes been referred to as the blue people, because the indigo dye that is used to colour their clothing often comes off on their skin, giving it a blue colouring. Their staple diet consists of millet, a grain that they use to make porridge, as well as rice, wheat, and other grains. In the dry season, their staple foods are grain and dates, whereas in the cooler, wet season, they have more milk and meat. These days, most Tuareg living in rural areas pursue a range of activities. These include the herding and breeding of livestock, carrying out gardening in the oases, and, of course, trade, which they have conducted for millennia. For more than 2,000 years, they have operated camel caravans. These are groups of camels that carry goods over long distances, trading products between the Sahel region south of the Sahara up to the Mediterranean Sea on the coast of North Africa. The camel caravans, sometimes consisting of more than 20,000 camels, dominated trans-Saharan trade until the middle of the 20th century. A strong camel can carry up to a total of 300 kilograms of goods, excluding the rider. These caravans often cross the Sahara to the Sahel region to the south. At first, the pace is slow, to allow the camels to feed, but as they enter the barren desert where there is nothing to eat, they walk from morning till night, typically covering 50 kilometers in a day. In the semi-arid Sahel region, which receives between 10 and 50 centimetres of rainfall per year, the Tuareg obtain cloth as well as millet grown by the Hausa people. In exchange for these, the Tuareg give them a number of products, in particular salt and dates. Although camels are still used, these days goods are more often carried by truck and train. The Tuareg also grow some of their own food. Crops grown by the Tuareg include millet, barley, wheat, maize, onions, tomatoes, and dates. In farming, there is a division of labour based on gender, with the men planting and irrigating the gardens and the women harvesting the crops. Herding animals is also an important economic activity. The livestock Tuareg particularly value are camels and cattle, rather than the smaller animals such as goats. In regard to herding animals, men usually take care of the camels, while the women look after the goats, sheep, and donkeys. For more than 1,000 years, the Tuareg have been involved in the salt trade. The salt is obtained by digging pits 6 to 8 metres deep to reach water with a very high salt content, also known as brine. The summer heat evaporates the water, leaving the salt behind. The salt is then formed into blocks which weigh around 21 kilograms and packed into the hollowed-out trunks of palm trees. These are then wrapped in straw and loaded onto camels to be traded elsewhere. The price of salt rises with the approach of summer, because this is the time of year when animals need it most. The best quality salt is used for human consumption, and the lower quality salt is given to animals. One group among the Tuareg that is not involved in the camel caravans and farming are the craftsmen, who make the distinctive jewellery and handicrafts. Traditionally, they had lower status due to their more sedentary lifestyle. The Tuareg have always prized and enjoyed the freedom of a nomadic way of life, whereas the craftsmen need to stay in one place with their tools and workshops. However, for this same reason, they were always able to gain a higher level of education than other Tuareg groups. With gradual modernisation, their higher education levels have come to be of more benefit to them, in addition to which their jewellery and leather goods have found a market among visitors from abroad. The economic power of the Tuareg has deteriorated since countries in the region gained their independence in the 1960s, and under the impact of severe droughts. Though most Tuareg continue to live as nomads, their traditional way of life is undergoing significant change.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
ਪਾਰਟ 4 ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕਾ, ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਨਸਰ ਦੇ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਫਸਟ ਹੈ ਪੈਨੀ ਰੇਨ, ਨੈਕਸਟ 24 ਮਾਰਚ 1982, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਬਲੈਕ ਟਾਊਨ, ਨੈਕਸਟ 76903275, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਮੰਥਲੀ, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਏ, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਸੀ, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਬੀ, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਏ, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਸ਼ੂਜ਼, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਬੀਚ ਕੈਫੇ, ਨੈਕਸਟ 7 AM, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਟਵਾਈਸ ਏ ਵੀਕ, ਨੈਕਸਟ ਔਨ ਦੀ ਯੂਅਰ balcony, next birds fish, next 11 PM, next ANE, next BND, next DNE, next B, next A, next D, next E, next F, next C, next C, next B, next A, next B, next lifestyle, next clothes, next milk, meat, next gardening, next feed, eat, next salt, next C, next A, next B। अगर चैनल ते नमें सब्सक्राइब जो कर लो, वीडियो लाइक कर दे और शेयर कर दे। थैंक यू फॉर वॉचिंग।